We have a lot of things to talk about this week, including B2B fun, SEM Rush adds PR services, Facebook gets an oversight board, Mailchimp evolves, Substack journalists, LinkedIn stories, TikTok bans fasting, COVID maps, Clinton cast, shirtless Proud Boys, Brandvalism, Google disinvites, and we'll wrap it up with some data and some stats on racial justice and brand trust. So you want to stick around for that, but we will kick it off with Best Story of the Week, which BL always has the honors of telling us about. So what do you got?
Well, what I got is a lot, but I have to say that I'm not seeing you, so there's some setting that's not showing you. Okay, what I have is that finally some good news that comes from, there you are, that comes from the pandemic.
I accidentally clicked on my video button and turned the video on.
It's much nicer to see you.
Yeah.
So perhaps you've seen the ad where the Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee, for some reason, which I haven't figured out, although I watched it a couple of times, talks about the Forrester wave. And then he throws his computer at the wall when he learns that the Cheetah Digital Agency is not handling the marketing for his tour. Have you seen that ad? I'll put it in the show notes. Then there's an immersive virtual reality experience for tugboat drivers. Then there's a new Glossier-inspired website for a company that makes equipment to test other equipment. Glossier is a makeup brand that has some very interesting graphics. So, you know, there's been a very clear shift during this pandemic from the boring, methodical, rational B2B advertising to more entertaining, more emotional, more engaging. And the shift, it's been years in the making, and it was ignited by our personal and professional lives all of a sudden becoming one and interwoven. And so B2B marketers, to get any kind of attention, have to be more interesting, which is definitely a good thing. So Cheetah Digital's vice president of content and data, whose name is Tim Glom, put it more bluntly. He said, we're talking to people, not machines. And when he was looking at creating the virtual Signals conference and its supporting campaign, he said he thought, how can we fucking jazz this up so it doesn't look like work? So companies are not afraid to play for laughs. There are several that are funny, and you know, they're acting like they're talking to real people. So that's a good change. But on the other hand, we talk about this all the time. Regular advertising has become really dull.
So I take contention with the premise of the article that B2B advertising was dull and boring, and now it got exciting because advertising all of a sudden is doing something differently. B2B has never been dull. It is. I love it. I went from an agency where it was mostly consumer stuff to an agency that was mostly B2B stuff, and B2B stuff is far more fun to do because it's more challenging, it's more demanding. They actually, you know, it's not all top of the funnel awareness stuff where you don't measure anything. It's get results kind of thing. So I kind of question the premise of it.
Well, when you think about the corporate advertising that's filled with stock photos and that has cheesy music, and then you compare it to Tommy Lee from Motley Crue throwing his computer at the wall, you know, that's something we really haven't seen before. And so maybe you were working on corporate advertising that was fun, but a lot of the rest of the world wasn't, you know.
So here's a B2B story that's fun. LinkedIn stories have finally arrived. So everybody's got stories. LinkedIn is late to the game, but they've started rolling out stories on LinkedIn. This is a TechCrunch article by Ingrid London, who says they've arrived. They started rolling out in the US and Canada, and then they are going to expand globally from there. So it's their own version. I have got it. I haven't posted anything yet, but I looked at the features. Looks like a stories feature. They are also updating their messaging service with video chat, and they're rebuilding their search feature, so there's a wider set of parameters. LinkedIn's search function has always been amazing, and so them adding more parameters, more things that you can search and filter by, is a good thing. But There you go. LinkedIn stepping up with the stories.
You always get features before me. I don't know why. And you know the Twitter feature where you could do voice recording, they took that away. They found that really didn't work. That was not a good one. So I never got it. But
I think they were integrating it into DMs now. I think I saw that.
Are they? Okay. So this past week, Facebook's bluff got called. Tired of waiting for Facebook to create the oversight board that they announced in April, several industry experts formed their own oversight board, which they call the real oversight board. So this is from an NBC News story from Olivia Solon. And that was a little bit of New York for you. They call it the Real Facebook Oversight Board. It's got 25 experts from academia, civil rights, politics, journalism, and they're going to analyze and critique Facebook's content moderation decisions, their policies, and the other platform issues as the run-up comes to the election and then beyond. And Zuckerberg had promised to create this board in April, and it is created, but it won't be making decisions and before the election. So we had discussed Facebook's announcement of the board in episode 307 back in May. And so the real Facebook Oversight Board is holding its first live meeting October 1st, and it's hosted by Kara Swisher, who's really getting around, who's got her new podcast going. And Facebook's board is restricted because they only review, the Facebook Oversight Board only reviews content after it's up. They only take it down after they see it, where, rather than deliberating about it, should it be there at all. So that's sort of an issue. So the new board is started by critics. It's developed by a group called The Citizens, which is a UK-based advocacy group founded by the Guardian and Observer journalist Carol Cadwallader, who you'll remember because she was the one who investigated Facebook's data sharing that led to Cambridge Analytics and made it a household name. And so she sees the emergency group as a real-time response from an authoritative group of experts to counter the spin that Facebook is still putting out. And unsurprisingly, Facebook isn't welcoming them. Cadwallader sees the board as a brain trust that brings together experts to scrutinize Facebook's decisions in a public forum. And unlike the company, unfortunately, none of the real oversight boards going to be binding on Facebook. So they're going to be able to talk about what they think, but they can't make Facebook do it. So, but they're going to have public weekly Zoom meetings, and they're going to include political advertising, the networks of bot activity, the organization of militias through the events pages, the discrimination of QAnon, conspiracy theories, and they're going to talk about the algorithmic amplification of disinformation. So their findings, their meetings will be public, which everything in Facebook happens behind closed doors, and we find out what they want us to find out. So, in terms of Facebook, they're not happy about this. And when the company learned about it, a representative tracked down the people who funded the citizens at a philanthropic group called Luminate, which is part of the Omidar group. And they wanted to express their disappointment, according to people who knew about it. And so from Facebook, same old, doesn't cut it anymore. Got to.
Well, I mean, it is. We'll see what happens. It is a clever way of bringing public pressure to bear on the problems that Facebook, long-standing problems that Facebook has had. And I'll be fascinated to see the discussions. There's a lot of very smart people there, both Cadwallader and I'm sorry, the name escapes me,
Kara
from Kara Swisher as well. Yeah. So very, very smart people that will be asking the right questions and have informed opinions about what's going on. So
yeah, the key thing is that it'll be public. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. This is kind of a public story. This is a public relations story. This is from a press release from SEMrush, my favorite keyword research SEO content tool. They have acquired a company called Prowly. And Prowly is an earned media public relations earned media software as a service, basically a competitor to Cision. They're based in Warsaw, and they offer brand content publishing capabilities. So you can like create a brand magazine, for example. They have obviously the media influencer database like Cision does. They do have a press release creator and distribution service, a CRM for managing your media contacts. They have newsroom creation services and sophisticated PR analytics, or so they say. I assume they do, but that's what it says in the press release. It will continue to operate as a standalone brand, probably will, but will also be tightly integrated into the SEMrush ecosystem, which I'm excited about because one, SEMrush is a fantastic tool, but two, it can get even more fantastic if there are indeed some sophisticated PR analytics that are integrated into the data you get through SEMrush. I mean, a lot of PR agencies don't realize the value that they are bringing to a digital presence to their clients, and just by doing the earned media, and how that contributes to visibility in search engines. If they can come up with this is something I've been thinking a lot about, so I'm going to go on a little bit about it. If they can come up with an algorithm for and it shouldn't be too hard, for earned media, that score can be built into what SEMrush already offers. So, I mean, you think about earned media placement, you get something in the New York Times that's got high value, so there should be an algorithmic value for that. If your client's name is in the headline of that New York Times article, that's an even bigger value, so there's another high value to add to the algorithm there. If the story is entirely about your company, that's a high value thing, versus your story get mentioned in the bottom paragraph of a Star Tribune article, and that's not very visible. So that has a much lower ranking, but it has value, right? So figuring out those values and building an algorithm around that would be really exciting. So we'll see what happens.
Well, anything would be better than, counting the circulation or the advertising value or the other ways that PR agencies traditionally, report to clients. But I'm really astounded that there is or not already some service doing that. There really isn't?
Well, I mean, I imagine there is. The last time I used Cision was a while ago, so I don't remember what exactly they have. But my experience with those PR focused tools is they're not real great, because the contacts are not always great, and the way that people use them, especially you and I getting our spam with we're clearly on a list that somebody pulled off at Cision and just is blindly emailing people. So yeah.
From what I can see, Muckrack is better. It's quite expensive, but it's better. And the other day I was in a seminar of theirs where they were showing journalists' most hated PR tactics. And my favorite one that I remember so well is, don't start your email pitches with, "I hope you're well." That was great back in March, and don't introduce yourself. And I mean, they had some really good advice, but
the thing that SEMrush has over the Cisions of the world, I imagine, and again, it's been a while since I've been in Cision, so I can't speak to what they've done lately, but SEMrush scrapes websites, so it knows what's on a website, right? So it can look at the code and get all that information from the content that they scraped. If you're just a media database, then you don't have that set of data to build an algorithm around, basically.
I don't know enough about them because I don't use them, but I think that Muckrack has some of that built in, but this sounds like it'll be more thorough. So this whole huge trend that's going on with journalists going to Substack is really interesting. And this past week, Casey Newton's leaving The Verge and taking his 20,000 member mailing list with him to Substack. which is looking more and more like the future of journalism. And this is from a 1.0 article by Sarah Zhang. And obviously he made himself a good deal being able to take his mailing list with him. But as he pointed out, if of the 20,000, if 1,000 will pay him $100 a year for his content, he'll be doing just fine. And given the thoroughness of his journalism, I believe that more people will do that. He's one of the people I would actually pay for. And, there's a limit to how many subscriptions everybody can have. This is a question that gets talked about a lot. How many can you really pay for? And then, how many can you really read? I mean, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens with him, but he's getting so much earned media. He's everywhere this week and, talking about how this is the future of journalism. So obviously it was a really good split with The Verge and they were supportive of him. And I wish him absolutely the best of luck with this.
Yeah, it is a fascinating development trend. I mean, we spoke about it with my Vikings former Vikings beat reporter who did Substack, and so yeah. I mean, there have been from the beginning of the rise of the internet, there have been journalists who have jumped on these platforms and built their own personal brand, and this is just another extension of that.
I think this is a platform that makes that easier for them.
Yeah, well, to make money off of it too.
Yeah,
I mean, getting well known by building your digital presence is one thing, but then monetizing it with Substack is the newest twist on that. So
yeah, so interesting.
So speaking of email, Mailchimp has released a major update. And Mailchimp has been evolving from its foundation or from its start in being an email marketing service to become a more complete marketing platform. They had a couple of years ago started integrating Facebook advertising into the platform, and they've had for a long time automated email campaign functionality and everything, but here's the latest version of it. They have released a bunch of new features, one of which is called Mailchimp Smarts, and this is just basically their database. They have, an AI-powered engine built on their database of millions of small business customers, and what they say is over 2 billion marketing activities across those customers. So you think of all the businesses that have Mailchimp newsletter and how people interact with those newsletters, what they open, what they click through on, all that stuff across all those customers creates a bunch of intelligence that you can use to apply to other customers in their campaigns. So that's something I've always liked about Mailchimp, and they're making a big deal of it, which they should. Creative Assistance is a new feature, and this is basically you import your brand style and all your brand assets, your imagery and everything, and it will on the fly create designs for you that are consistent with what your brand looks like. So it takes content from your website, images, logo, blah, 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 and creates different brands, different designs on the fly that you can use in social posts and so forth. They have a customer journey builder, so you can visualize and automate your customer's journey, based on how they interact with you. They have a subject line helper, so it's real-time feedback. As you're entering the subject line in your email, it'll give you real-time feedback on creating subject lines that can help increase your open rates. Next best action is recommendations on how to improve your campaign performance. Send time optimization they've had for a while, so this is send when it's most likely to be opened. Purchase likelihood is something new, so send targeted campaigns to customers more likely to make future purchases. I wonder if this is tied with their Facebook advertising integration as well, if they're pulling in some of that data from your Facebook campaigns. I don't know. I will find out, so I'll report back. Product recommendations, and then they have content blocks of personalized products. So if you've got your Mailchimp campaign account hooked up to your catalog and your customer database, then it's going to know what products your customers like, and personalize that content based on individual customers. So a lot of improvements there. Pricing wise, it didn't say anything about pricing, but they do have tiered levels of pricing. So I'm sure a lot of these aren't free.
Well, I'm sure they're not. But a while ago, they started talking about how, they have this logo with the monkey and the chimp, and how they're more than that. And, until they change that in some way, a lot of people aren't going to get it. So this all sounds great to me, and I can't wait to try it. So this is also something new. TikTok has banned ads that are for fasting and weight loss supplements, and it's restricting those ads that promote harmful and negative body image. And that's a really cool thing. This is from a CNBC story by Megan Graham, and the reason that is so good is that its audience is so young, and so they want to have to have users not be exposed to that. And the users under the age of 18, of which there are a substantial number on TikTok, won't see ads for weight management products, and ads for older users are going to have to comply with other rules so that they don't promote a negative body image or dangerous diets. And they're introducing new policies to combat problematic and exaggerated claims in diet and weight loss products, and have stronger restrictions on the claims and references to body image. And that was in a blog post that they did. And they're also partnering, which I think is very cool, with the National Eating Disorders Association to connect those resources directly to the app. And that's a really good move on their part.
Yeah, very good. There's another good move that is designed to protect you from harm. Google Maps is integrating a new layer into their maps. This is according to Engadget's Andrew Tarantola. So they are rolling out a new layer for maps that inform users of Google Maps whether there are new cases of COVID are on the rise in areas that you want to go to. So as you use Google Maps for directions and stuff, if you're taking a trip, vacation or something, you want to know where you're going to go. If you're going to pass through areas that are hot spots for COVID, you'll know about it now. It is displaying the 7-day average of new COVID cases per 100,000 people. And it notes whether the infection rate is increasing or decreasing in the area in question. The data comes from a bunch of sources, including Johns Hopkins, the New York Times, Wikipedia, which gets their data from the World Health Organization, national governments, and area hospitals. It will work for all 220 countries on the planet, and is rolling out on both iOS and Android this week. I checked, I don't have it, but the screenshot in the article has North Dakota as a hot spot and increasing in infections, which for those of you geographically challenged listeners, is right next door to Minnesota. So we're being inundated, we're surrounded by anti-maskers, basically. Mine is not, this is not so much about this article. This is a Rebecca Stewart article from The Drum, who talks about new PR crisis, about what brands should do when they're canceled. It's an interesting read, and it has some good advice for that situation. But it just set me off in another rant kind of thing on cancel culture. I mean, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'm going to say it now. It has to stop. The cancel culture is just, it's out of hand. We got Trump was the canceller in chief, but the brands are one thing, but people are another. And the most virulent cancelers that I've seen online, and I'm not actually, I mean, you might think that I'm talking about personal experience, which I'm not. I haven't had that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I've watched it happen, and it's just it's bad. And it's the most virulent cancelers. They're woke white progressives. They're just unrelenting against people who have either differing opinions than them, which is the worst, or they've done something wrong. There's, maybe they've said something that's racist or something, but there has to be a tolerance for change. There has to
We talk
be.
about this a lot, and there's not, and that's what's changed so much
Yeah.
in our society, and it's just so really sad.
Yeah, and I hear them all dismissing any attempt at somebody who has been called out for something and is trying to address that sin, and they dismiss it as performative. Performative is the new buzzword. I mean, they all listen to like Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes or whatever, who using performative, and all of a sudden everybody's just, oh, it's performative. So you don't even have a chance to try and
Exactly. Horrible. But then you have the brands that, like the Perry. What about what happened to Bumblebee Tuna this week? I mean, and Goya, like who's going to buy Goya again? Who isn't a Trump supporter? The way that brands are being brought into politics, there's not a hell of a lot they can do about that. And Bumblebee said, we suggest what you do with our tuna is eat it, but
So I just finished with a redesign of a website, and in the process of getting revisions and everything, you discover new things, and like social sharing. So you share a link from a website, and it doesn't display the right image, or it doesn't display the right text that you want to accompany that social share. There's a reason for that, and once you like share content on Facebook, creates a cache of that content so that it speeds up delivery of that when other people see that content on Facebook. And so in order to deal with that, in order to update it to the most recent image or the most recent text or whatever, you need to tell Facebook to re-scrape the page. And there's a tool for that. It's called the Facebook Debugging tool. And we'll put a link to it in the show notes, and you just use it and you put it in there and put the URL in there, and it tells you what it looks like in Facebook, and then you can actually tell Facebook to scrape the page again to get the most recent version of that page. LinkedIn has a similar thing, and it's called LinkedIn Post Inspector. Does basically the same thing but for LinkedIn, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. But two useful tools, even if you're not redesigning or designing a website, but just updating old content. It's a good tool to have in your box.
What I end up doing a lot of the time is taking out the picture that they put in there and putting in another one, and which is really annoying. But this one's interesting. It's from the nonprofit news site called The Markup, and the app is called Blacklight, and it's a real-time website privacy inspector. And what it does is it illuminates the hidden tracking technologies on any website. So their description of it says, who's peeking over your shoulder while you work, watch videos, learn, explore, and shop on the internet. So you put in the address of any website, and it will scan it and reveal the user tracking technologies on the site. And you might be quite surprised by what you learn. It's kind of a fun thing to do anyway. So, and the other one, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I actually have another one now that you mentioned this Blacklight. There's a tool called Built With. You can install it as a Chrome extension, and it tells you what kind of technology any website is using, including the track. So if there's a Facebook pixel on it, or it's using Google Analytics, or all of that, it'll tell you that, as well as if they're using WordPress or Drupal or a bunch of different technology related kinds of.
Put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from the weekly numbers from Edelman's Trust Barometer from June of this year, addressing racial injustice and brand trust. This is U.S. adults who say select brand responses to racial injustice are important to earning, keeping their trust. And so 64% of the respondents said setting an example within their own organization is important. Response, reflect the full diversity of the country in their communications, 63%. It's very important. You and I have talked about the lily white PR and advertising industries. make products accessible and suitable to all communities, 61%, invest in addressing the root causes of racial inequality, 60%, acknowledge the problem, 60%, inspire customers and employees to get involved, 58%, advocate for racial equality, 58%, and educate the public, 57%. So it seems like a dramatic shift, but I don't think we've ever seen these numbers, these questions asked before.